Des Bishop, we chat again. How are you, sir?
It's great. It's great to be here. I was thinking before, when I was waiting to come on, that you're one of the very few people in the entertainment industry that knew me when I was drinking and whatever else.
I mean,
I'm sure we talked about that before, but
yeah.
it's always on my mind. I was like, wow, I know I'm 27 years not drinking. So I know Dave McCardle at least like 27 and a half years,
Yeah.
which makes us old, obviously. But, it's nice that you can have these connections for so long.
We were college buddies, and I know for sure, because I'll never forget it, we spent an Easter weekend on Ilan Aaron before you were a Gaeilgeoir, listening to Moray Kante's Yeke Yeke, and watching the sun come up on Ireland's greatest summer, well, until recent summers, as we all know, 1995.
Yeah, it was a little before that great summer, because I went back to New York that summer, and everybody talked about the summer of '95, but I kind of missed it. But the weather was good on that
Easter.
trip.
It was Easter.
Yeah.
Like in my memory, the sun came up that Easter Monday, Sunday morning, whatever it was, and it never went down again for the rest of the summer. I spent it working in a bar in central London in Covent Garden, 50 hours a week, missed all of it. And London is hotter, as you'll probably know yourself.
My overriding memory of that trip was how difficult the boat ride back was.
Don't remember the boat ride back. I remember we all marched up to Dún Aengus, and as you mentioned in your intro there, these were in the days of wild living, and but anyway, we all marched up to Dún Aengus half charged, and some people walked straight up to the edge and like sat out as if it was a park bench. And I remember being on it for about like 5 seconds and then thinking like, this is a really bad idea. I could see the TV news stories. A group of young people went to the Aran Islands today to enjoy themselves.
Yeah,
anyway.
These days it would have been like a stupid video on TikTok, like, don't be like these people.
Yeah, exactly. But we do go back and listen. You know what? Weirdly, right? I mean, obviously, I sort of watched your developing career as a comedian over the early parts of the years, and the way sometimes when you know someone, you're almost worried to kind of check them out in case you kind of half think they're crap. And you don't have to tell them. And actually, the first time that I saw your stand-up show then was quite a bit. I mean, I saw the things you did on TV, like the work things and all that sort of stuff. Was My Dad Could Have Been James Bond, and I really found that a powerful and affecting show. Like, it was funny, but it was open and it was emotional and it was real and it was raw and it was moving. So I was like, go Des. I was I felt like a sigh of relief. I felt like, oh, thank God he's good.
I mean, that's quite the moment to come back to my stand-up. I mean, that was intense. But also those shows that you were talking about at the Opera House, my dad was literally dying. He died the Tuesday after the Saturday was the last show.
I remember it as being the Everyman. So maybe I'm wrong, but did you reprise it?
My dad was nearly James Bond, was definitely the Opera House, but that's just the memory being fickle.
Yes.
But my dad, that was a 2000.
But I do remember, like, amongst your earliest sort of bits was the Radio Friendly skit that you used to do.
That's right.
We were all that.
I tried to make Stevie G famous, even though it wasn't really based on Stevie G. I just used his name. But those were, that's why still, honestly, to this day, that's why I feel like Cork is always my main place. Like, per capita, I do the most tickets in Cork, whatever stage of my career. And I think a lot of it comes back to those early days where I had so much Cork-based material, Radio Friendly, Sir Henry's, all those bits. And what's annoying is some of those bits aren't recorded. Like, when I would do bits about Sir Henry's, they were always kind of slightly improvised, or they were never really like
worked.
Yeah, they weren't like stand-up bits. It was just like, if I was in Cork, I'd have a run at it. Sometimes I would nail it. Sometimes I wouldn't. It would always be different. So I have no recording of I wrote a passage in the book about my dad. I wrote a passage about my time going to Sir Henry's, but I never captured the Sir Henry's. And I feel like doing it now would be pointless. Like, you'd almost have to have like an age limit of like 40 plus at the show for the people to find it funny, because they would need to know what you were talking about.
Yeah. The only thing that I think really captured it, and I always thought there'd be more documentation of it, but there wasn't even at the time video-wise. Paul Mulvaney has some video, but Ray Scannell wrote a play called Deep, and it was absolutely excellent. It really got the vibe of it. It was loosely based on Henry's, but it had some footage in it and stuff. By the way, just in case anyone thinks I'm swigging on a beer here, this is King of Kefir, made in Dublin. Cucumber, mint, and thyme. That's the point in our lives we're at nowadays.
That's where we're at. We're drinking boutique health drinks. That's where we're at. And you can buy them now. Code name Dave McCardle for 10% off.
But let's segue swiftly from that, because you mentioned about, I see you as Cork. Like, I know there's a Wexford because you went to school in Wexford when you were escaping from your wild living in whatever borough of New York you were in. Yeah. But your mom, your grandmom, I know because I saw the little trailer for Mamma Mia, the show that you're doing this Saturday, Everyman?
This Saturday night in the Everyman.
That was not her house on the far side of the tunnel in Glengariff.
No, that's her house, man.
Get out.
I mean, I explained it all in the show.
Yeah.
That particular picture was possibly before she was born or right around the time she was born. But if you don't believe me, there are a lot of pictures of my grandmother's house online. You just put in Tunnel House, Glengariff. It's a very well photographed.
No, it's not that I don't believe the house was there. It's that I'm like, that was literally your grandmother's house. That is mad. It's very locatable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, people know it, but listen, I can't tell the full story because it's pretty dark, actually.
No, sorry. No, I'm not even trying to tease you into that.
No. There's a reason why I'm telling you this.
Okay.
So it's a pretty dark story, but in the show I explain it. But the crazy thing about it is not just is it a very locatable house, but the story about my great-grandfather particularly, and also my great-grandmother, and then stuff that happened to my grandmother's sister, it's all well known in the local area. And I meet people all the time that tell me they know the story. They know it like in great detail.
That is crazy.
But the crazy thing is that my mother never knew because my grandmother never told it because it's great secret, great shame. So actually, my parents, the whole side of the family that came to New York, they only found out these stories because in the Opera House years ago, some distant relation of mine, like a third cousin, came up to me and told me the story.
You are joking.
Like a random person that was at my show.
Brilliant. I love this.
And then I told my family, and then they started reaching out to other cousins, and they were like, oh, yeah. And, there's a great Facebook post by my cousin, Brendan Lyons. He's my mother's first cousin. They're all descendants of that house. He tells the story in great detail if you're bored. But anyway, it's a pretty amazing story in its own right. It fits into my show just in terms of the show's about my mother, but I like to sort of look into the legacy of trauma that created my mom. But I do need to point out, because I've just used terms like dark and secrets and legacy of trauma, that the show is very funny, but it's funny about stuff that is quite full on.
Well, as was your dad's story. I mean, for me, that was what made the show special, was that it was funny and entertaining, but it was real. And that's what I admired most, was like you were expressing emotion. Like it's a bit more on trend now.
I've been joking with people saying, if my dad was dying now, I would be a mega star because there's so much call for it's so brave. It was so brave.
Yeah, no, but it's good. I would hope it's less remarkable now because it's more
it's more open. And to be honest, in Mia Mama, I joke about this very thing that we're talking about, the fact that actually now people are so open about their emotions, and they weren't not open in 2010 when my dad was dying. But I don't really talk about mental health in the show about my dad. I delve right into the mental health stuff in the show about my mother. And the other great difference, because they were both about heavy stuff, but the difference between the show about my dad and the show about my mother is that was a show very much about thinking about fatherhood and my relationship with my father based on the fact that he's dying, whereas this show is much more about the fact that my mother is dead. And we do talk about our relationship, but I also talk about grief and loss. Didn't really talk about that. My dad was nearly James Bond, so they are quite different in that sense.
Okay, yeah, intriguing.
But the Glengariff thing, obviously, I posted that because the show is in Cork. I want people to know the Cork connection. But the Glengariff thing is a very funny but very intense part of the show, but it is very real. So if people want to find out the answer, I would also like to point out that both my grandmothers are from Cork because my dad's from Middleton.
Oh, wow. Okay. I can't make the show on Saturday. I described my my activities on Saturday night as babysitting, but I'm told that if you're minding your own baby, you're actually parenting. And I said, like, well, it feels like I'm babysitting, but still, apparently anyway, I'm parenting on Saturday night while herself goes out in the town with the girls. So I can't make your show on Saturday night, but I'm going to have to, because I would love to find out what that story is. That sounds intriguing. And I love the fact that it's a story that missed at least the generation that went across the big pond. And it's now...
Yeah, it's only as sick as your secrets. I did a show in Athlone only recently, and the woman came up and tried to correct my version of the story. This random woman. She was like, now the story I heard.
That's so Ireland.
Yeah, because every time somebody drives past that, because the house is gone, right? So it's right next to the Welcome to Cork sign. The next time you're on that road, the N71, Glengarriff to Kenmare, on the Cork side, there's a sign that says Welcome to Cork. And just to the right of that was where my grandmother's house was. So people would drive by it and say, oh, there used to be a house there. And they all think it's haunted, by the way. Like, it's all very eerie.
Mad. I remember the tunnel from years ago. It must be a while since I drove that. That brings you to Miles Gap, ultimately, isn't it? Once you're on the...
That's right. You get through there and you go Kenmare.
The tunnel is still there.
Oh, the 3 tunnels. Yeah, there's the main one is the one, the border between Cork and Kerry. It's the Caha Pass. And then there's like 2 other little ones right afterwards. But it's a great road. It was shut for the last... It opened back up. I can't remember exactly when, but I just know that Hannah, my now wife, was over with me, and I wanted to show her the tunnel, but the road was closed because they were working on the tunnel. But it's opened again now.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe that explains why I felt like I hadn't been through it in a while. Yes, you got married. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, she's been over to Ireland twice, but
fellow comedian,
another comic. But the difference between her and me is she's sleeping right now and I'm wide awake. And I'm not awake because I'm doing this interview with you. I'm just an early riser. But she has the proper comedian's circadian rhythm.
Because you're still stateside. You're coming over, obviously, for this show. Are you doing more?
Tonight.
Flying
tonight, yeah. Magic. And then I have 8 shows around Ireland. I mean, honestly, this Everyman show is actually like sort of like an add-on date because I did 3 months of the tour before the pandemic. This tour is meant to be over a long time ago. So the very last shows, one of the last shows that happened in Ireland, actually, of anybody, was March the 8th in the Everyman, the show that I did the 6th, 7th, and 8th in the Everyman. And then Ireland shut down. I did the following weekend, shows didn't happen, and shows didn't happen for a year and a half. And I have footage from that night. Like I'm joking about the first positive COVID case was in the Cork University Hospital. And I'm joking about, oh, it's all about to come. It's going to shut us all down. Yes, and you're like, it's all skiers.
Des, it wasn't a joke.
Yeah, man. It's the naivety when I look at those jokes now. Oh, actually, my opening joke, I walked out. I was like, hey, coronavirus is coming, but Cork people are like, no, I paid for these tickets. I'm going because everyone's packed into the venue on March 8th, And anyway, who knew? But anyway, this is I'm doing one more show because the show was pretty good then, but now it's very tight. It's evolved a lot since those days.
Did COVID lead to you meeting your now wife, or was that already in play? But it allowed you the time, perhaps, to how did that all work in terms of the relationship that you'd met?
100% COVID relationship. Oh. No, I didn't know who she was before COVID.
Wow.
I guess I was following her because I guess I thought she was cute. I saw her on somebody else's story. I think I saw her on comedian Nikki Glazer's Insta story one day. So I was like, well, I'll follow her. She's cute. And she would pop up on my story sometimes. And then during the pandemic, one day I saw she posted a story and she was like near me, And so I clicked on her Instagram and I saw she was following me, which I didn't realize she was following me. So she's following me. Then it's not too weird to be like, hey. So I was like, hey, you're near me. Do you want to meet up for a coffee? I was bored out of my mind. I was bored out of my mind. And so she was like, yeah. So I was like, let's meet in Sag Harbor for a coffee. She was staying in Shelter Island. She had to get a ferry. Wow. So I picked her up from the ferry and we hit it off straight away. So then it was a whirlwind COVID romance.
Class. So are you stateside pretty much permanently now?
I mean, it's got to be 50-50. I mean, I still have a house in Dublin. I still, she's happy to come back and forth. We'll see what happens. She wants to have a kid. I'm not sure I'm ready for the babysitting just yet, Dave.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But for now, I'm bi-coast. I mean, I've been bouncing back and forth since my mother got sick, really. So I've kind of like nearly 7 years sort of doing both sides. So I'm hoping to continue that, but we'll see what happens. I mean, she's very busy. And she has to travel a lot. So we just accept that traveling and being is part of our lives. So I don't think that much is going to change.
No, and I think the world has kind of realized you can live in different places and work in other places and move around and be a bit more fluid than perhaps people. But then again, that was your life anyway. In terms of being a gigging comedian, is a lot of moving around.
Yeah, and that's why she gets it. We get it, and I respect the hustle. You know, she's earlier in her career, so she's super ambitious, and like it's going great for her. So I get that. You know, I'm not going to be like the nagging partner that's like, hey, you never spend time with me, because I know when I was, especially when I was like, you know, in a phase of my career where I was just like, I was so hungry, like, you know, I had a few people that were like, you know, you're working too hard, and I didn't appreciate that at all. And I don't regret the hustle of those years. So I would never try to hold her back from that hustle, especially when it benefits me for her to make that cash. You know what I'm saying?
Are you awake now, honey? Well, listen, I mean, I think why don't we mention some of the other dates just in case this particular piece that we're doing travels wider than Cork?
Yeah, Turles and Ennis, I would say maybe might be. I'm not exactly sure the dates on those, but they're all within the next month. Thurles and Ennis would be two that would be within the catchment area of Red FM. But any other dates are desbishop.net/tour dates. I know Mandrada, Galway, Armagh. I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to get an Armagh audience of Red FM, but there's some dates. Kilkenny, maybe. Kilkenny actually is not a bad.
Well, you never know. We'll post this chat up online, and who knows how far it could go. But it's
exactly, Dave. I keep forgetting that we're not confined to the broadcasting license anymore. We're not constrained by the county bounds. We're going to go through that tunnel. We're going to go through the tunnel. 021-451-458. Give us a call. It's actually the number, by the way, just in case people think I'm joking. 021-451-458. Give us the call. We're up here. We're on Blarney Street. We're on Blarney Street, but that part they didn't say because they didn't want people to know. But we're on Blarney Street, but the tower is up at the top of Knocknaheeny.
Des, pleasure chatting, man. Hope the gig goes really well on Saturday night in the Everyman Mamma Mia with Des Bishop. Be there. Enjoy it.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, me.